Paranormal Buzz Radio is proud to present Girls vs. Ghost Media's Spooky Talk with Madison Smith from Madison Paranormal. You can find Spooky Talk every other Sunday, 6 Eastern, 5 Central, right here live on Paranormal Buzz Radio. Be sure to join in the live interactive chat by going to Spreaker.com or downloading the Spreaker app for all devices.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
Here's your host, Madison Smith.
Very spooky welcome to Tessa del Zoppo Groff.
Hey, Maddie, how's it going?
Not too bad. How about you?
Same, hanging in there. I'm excited.
Oh yeah, for sure. And sorry if I slaughtered anything.
We could totally fix it if you did, so it's totally fine. There's a lot to talk about.
It's okay, guys. We'll get through this. It's fine.
We got this.
All right. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so most people know me as a medium. I had a near-death experience when I was about 4 years old, so that kind of started my journey from what, you kind of piece things together after a while, and I think that really jump-started my ability as a medium. And it wasn't until my teens that I really started giving readings and understanding a little bit more about the ability. I would have crazy experiences as a kid where I would see a man coming into my room every single night and come to find out it was my uncle who died even before I was born. So I would talk to him and relay information to my family about nicknames that he gave to people, the way that he died, things like that. And so that was kind of my mom's way of knowing that I had this ability because my mom has it too. So, from a very young age, I saw a spirit, I communicated with them. And then as I got older, I got big into trying to understand a little bit more about the spirit world. I wanted to know and I wanted to experience things. So I would do investigations. I would go to haunted locations. I started doing readings for people and then it just kind of kicked off. So I started reading people all over. I started doing I was called for criminal investigative cases, missing persons, homicides, things like that. And then it just kind of started to grow from there. And like you said, I had started a casino show. And it started off in 2020, the beginning of 2020. And then when COVID hit, everything just kind of shut down. I did my podcast, which was fun. I interviewed a ton of people from the entertainment world, A Night with a Medium. And then when entertainment kind of kicked back up, I started my live shows again in casinos and venues. And it is now called Live with the Other Side. And so that's been really fun. And we tour and I get to read people all over the place. And I think those are really fun because people in the audience can experience, spirit communication firsthand. And in between all of that, I do a lot of still paranormal investigations, events, and things like that. We started Dead Time with the Groffs with my husband, Nick. And that's really cool, where we review different videos and submissions and stuff like that, determine whether or not these videos, whether it be paranormal or aliens or just any subject you could possibly think of that's creepy or weird, determine whether or not they're real or maybe they're faked. So it's a cool little web series that we have going on YouTube. Yeah, and that's kind of my life in a nutshell.
Very nicely done.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Round of applause, everyone. Round of applause.
We'll just clap for ourselves.
Also, I love your nails.
Thank you.
Just saying.
I know. They're like turquoise or something. I don't even know what color this is.
I know, mine all popped off.
Yeah.
They were like a blue.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God.
This is so awesome.
So, was the uncle your first ever experience, or did you have one before that?
I had one before that, and I like to refer to it as like my first experience. So I said that I had a near-death experience when I was a kid. I ended up really, really sick. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I had an infection that went through my body, and so my mom rushed me over to a children's hospital, and they did an emergency surgery, to which my mom at the time, now this was like 30 years ago. I sound really old saying stuff like that, but they let my mom in the surgical room at the time, which they don't do that now. They won't let anybody in, but they let my mom in back then, and she was standing with me, and I just kept seeing figures around as they were putting me under, like they put the anesthesia on my face. They were putting me to sleep. And I remember seeing faces around me, and I thought at the time that maybe it was doctors and nurses because they were in white. And then my mom told me when I came out of surgery that nobody was around me. And then I stayed in the hospital for about almost like 2 weeks, like anywhere from 10 to 14 days, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And there was this like crazy thunderstorm that happened. And I remember like you're at the very top of the hospital, right? Lots of floors, and you're watching over the city. And there was just lightning and all this crazy stuff. So I was really excited about this. And I'm watching out the window, and all of a sudden the door to my hospital room opened. And I remember all these white lights coming in, and they surrounded my bed. And I would lay there and I looked up at them, and it wasn't scary or anything. Like I wasn't scared. It was more or less just faces looking down at me and smiling. And so I thought my mom might have seen it because my mom was sleeping in like a cot across from me, and she was totally asleep. So it was just me, and I'm looking up at them, and all of a sudden they just went into this big ball and left. And, so as a kid, I'm like, did I dream that? Is that real? It's hard to determine because you've gone through so much. But then when I went home, that's when everything started kicking up. I would see my uncle in my room. The house that we lived in was very, very active too with paranormal activity, given the location where we lived, things that happened in the house. There was deaths in the house, and just the area in general is a very haunted, I guess you can call it, area. So I always was surrounded by weird stuff,
So what happened in your house? Like what caused the death, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, well, my uncle died in the house, actually. He died at a very young age. He was 30 years old. And, so the way I grew up, I'm Italian, and all the Italians, we lived together. So like my grandma lived downstairs from us. It was an apartment building. So my grandma lived downstairs, and then me and my parents lived upstairs. There was a third floor apartment where my uncle would come and stay sometimes. And then next door to us, there was like my great grandmother lived there. My aunt and uncle lived there, my cousins, whatever. So everybody kind of lived very close. And over the years, just I think the land has a lot to do with it too. But like I said before, my uncle was one of the people who died in the house. And I think that there was records of deaths even before our family moved in. And he died in a very tragic way. It was very unexpected. And so I think that there was a lot of stuff left unsaid with my uncle, which is why I think he was so persistent once he realized, like, I could see him, I could hear him. I think it was a very persistent thing to let everybody know he was okay, he's around, things like that. So that's kind of what I've come up with over the years after thinking about it and going back to the house, like in later years when I was grown up and, going back to investigate. And we've done EVPs in the house and everything, just considering how much activity there was.
And then, was there anyone else who came to talk with you in the house, or was it just your uncle?
So there's a weird presence in the house too. And I don't know exactly what or who it is, but the one thing I could say is, so my mom's a nurse. Okay. And when I was really young, going through all of that illness and stuff like that, she was in nursing school. And so she would study a lot. She would take a lot of time studying. And the only quiet place with kids in the house and Italians being loud like we are anyways would be the third floor. And the third floor is where my mom had a really creepy experience. And she went up there. She was studying one night. And she was sitting there. And if you think about it, it's an older building. So like it's very creaky and there's a lot of noises that happen, right? And she was sitting up there studying and she heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. And so she's sitting there and the next thing you know, she's quiet and she waits and she thinks it's my dad. So she's calling out his name to see, like, what do you want? I'm studying. What do you need? And nobody said anything. So she waited and she heard them continually come up the stairs. And then she said it just stopped. The door slightly opened. And again, my mom's a medium. So she's very sensitive to energy the way that I am. And I guess an energy came into the room, but she got chills everywhere. And she said it freaked her out so bad. Like she could tell the presence was very heavy, negative, not anything that she wanted to be around. So she left all of her stuff, got up, ran down the stairs, and she made my dad go back up and get her stuff later on because she said it was just overwhelming how creepy it was. So that moment was kind of what made us go back years later. My grandparents, until they died, lived in that house. So we didn't sell the house. Actually, we didn't sell the property till a few years ago. My grandfather died 4 years ago. So if you could put that into perspective, we owned the house for quite some time. So we went back and we decided to do EVPs and stuff like that, just to validate what we were feeling and maybe try to get some more answers. And we went into the basement, which is another spot that used to get a lot of activity. My mom would feel a heavy presence down there that would almost mock people, or from what my mom thinks, like it could have pretended to be like maybe her brother, the one that I would pick up on and stuff like that. Cause it didn't feel like, as a medium, you could feel the energy and the difference. You could feel if it's grandma and grandpa coming through, it feels like a light energy. And when it's not, it feels heavy, so She would feel this heaviness in the basement. We went and did an EVP down there. And when we played it back, there was this almost growl that said, "Get out." So we listened to it and we got out. And that was it. So we never really fully got answers, but I don't know if there is any answers. I think that the land itself in our area that we grew up in was just so filled with history and like violence and things like that, it could have been anything.
Do you think that any of that stuff maybe followed you anywhere or no?
I don't think so. I think that from a very young age, it was important for me to figure out how to control the ability that I had, because it would, when I was living there, especially, it was really hard being a medium in a haunted house. It was hard to sleep. I would hear things all the time. I could hear whispers. Things would come into my room and wake me up, to the point where I remember I was at a bus stop with my mom. So like we would leave, we would go to just the corner of our street. That's where my bus stop was to go to school. Mm-hmm. And I was still young. Like I was probably still in maybe like first, second grade. And this Native American man came out of nowhere. We've never seen him before. We never saw him again after this happened, but he came out of nowhere and he approached me and my mom and he said, "Your daughter is seeing things in the house. Your daughter has an ability and she sees things." And my mom's just kind of looking at him like, "How the heck do you know that?" And he had made a dream catcher and he said, "Put this in your daughter's room and it should help her." And then he left and we never saw him again. it was wild to even think back on. And I still have the dream catcher to this day. So my mom hung it up in my room, and, it helped for some things. And then there's some things that it did not help with, that was under my control. And it took years for me to create boundaries with the other side and figure out how to create almost like this bubble that I talk about all the time, to where I have control over what I'm seeing or what's coming close to my energy. So I think when we left the house, and I've already made those boundaries with myself, in any situation, I don't ever feel as though something attaches to me or follows me or anything like that, because I'm so in control of my energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then do you think your uncle is still around, or do you think he's kind of moved on from everything?
I think for the most part, he's moved on. I think that it was important for him to relay some messages, because the way he died was so sudden. And so I think he kind of got what he needed in that sense, because I always say this: spirit will give what they need, or what we need. When it's spirit, right? Not a ghost, but spirit. I think that they'll give us what we need, or give whatever they need. And hopefully they move on after that. There's been a couple times where we've gone to places like Lilydale in New York. I don't know if you've ever heard of Lilydale, but it's like the biggest spiritual community of mediums and things like that in New York. And the mediums there would sometimes bring up an uncle figure, or in talking, in passing, there would be times that an uncle would come up and stuff. So I know he's always around, and he's very protective, but I think for the most part, he's moved on, and he just checks in once in a while.
Yeah. And it's good that he still checks in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then did your mom help you, like, over time with your ability?
It was funny because as, like, in the era that she grew up in, right, being Italian, number one, and if you think about it, Italians are mostly Catholic, you're raised Catholic, and there's a lot of religions that are against what it is that we do as mediums, or they don't believe in it. And so for the most part, especially in her younger years, she was made fun of a lot for what she did. People would pick on her and be like, "Oh, did you see Casper today?" And, and so it just got to this point where she shut down, and she didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to use it. She didn't really say anything about it. She would still have experiences, but she wouldn't talk about it. And so she never got the opportunity to really develop it the way that I did. So it was weird. It was almost like once I became very vocal about it, and once she realized I had the same ability she did, we really kind of dove into it together in a sense, where we would try to develop it and understand it and stuff together. And so, yeah, but at the same time, to answer your question, she did help me in a sense, because I think that if I hadn't had the support that I did with her, I mean, how would I, and that goes for anything, right? Like, it's something that we're passionate about, or that we love, or we want to do. You need some support. You need somebody cheering you on and helping you get through that. So that's kind of who she was to me for all those years.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It's a shame that people were discouraging.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like today, right? Today,
Yeah.
the paranormal and mediumship and all that, it's very much talked about, and it's almost like normalized in a sense. There's still people who don't understand it or don't agree with it, and that's totally fine, because everybody's entitled to their opinion, but it's way more talked about now than it was back then.
Yeah, and that's a good thing in my opinion.
Yeah, me too.
So, what's like your far most favorite experience that you've had from the other side?
Ooh. It's a tough question, because I think I've learned so much over the years, and I feel like I continuously learn, or I continuously have these experiences that might help me to understand certain things. You never stop learning, right? And I think that goes for everybody. I think one of the most profound things that I ever experienced was one of the first times that I ever did a reading publicly for somebody, because, you keep it quiet for so long. There's like a level of confidence that you have to build in it too, because you question yourself, or you don't fully understand it for many years. And then all of a sudden you kind of break out and you're like, okay, I'm ready now. I'm going to go do a reading publicly. And I did a reading publicly for somebody once, the very first time, and it ended up being a mother who unfortunately lost her young son. And so I connected with her son, and come to find out it was almost like an open case where they were still looking into what happened to him. So I grew up in Niagara Falls, New York. And so what happened with him, or what they thought, was that it was a possible, quote unquote, suicide. And the mother never fully came to terms with it because she knew her son. And she said, my son would never do this, right? Now, I didn't know any of that. The only thing I knew was what the woman's name was, and she sat in front of me, and then I immediately picked up on her son. So I started connecting with her son, and he started showing me what happened to him. So I kind of asked Spirit, almost like an interview with them. Like, I want to know specific things. I want to know how they died. I want to know how old they were. I want to know specific things that only like mom would know, to validate that it's them. And so I started asking these questions, and he started showing me what looked like a movie in my mind of how it played out. And he showed me that he was over by Niagara Falls, and he loved to draw and take pictures. He was very artistic in that way. So he set himself up with drawing material, and he sat by the falls, and he was sitting and he was drawing pictures of the gorge and the falls. And unfortunately, I think it was raining that day, and he had stood up to try to adjust his stuff, and he slipped. And if you have ever been by Niagara Falls, there's a part before the falls called the Rapids, and the area is very dangerous, very dangerous. And if you go into the rapids, there is no coming out normally. And he slipped and he fell and he got pulled away. And that was basically what happened to him. But when, police and stuff arrived, they had found his stuff, and there was no body that was found. There was no anything. So they determined it was a suicide. So this boy came through and basically said, you need to tell my mom I didn't do this on purpose. It was an accident, which was what the mom was hoping for and what she believed in her heart would have happened. So, but it was the first time I've ever done a public reading before. And if you think about it, it's a really heavy story. Like, it really hit me. Like, I was crying, she was crying. And I remember thinking, like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Because this is really hard. Like, this is this is really hard, and this is really sad. And like, am I supposed to be doing this? Can I handle this? But then after it all sank in, and I realized that I had really helped her, and she had pursued the case, and she had found some closure and some validation for herself. It became, instead of me being scared of it, it became motivation. Like, I need to jump into this, and I need to do this more, and I could really help people. So I think, like, if I had to think of a very profound moment, that would be definitely my top 3.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really nice that the mother found closure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what people need. I think that's what a lot of people look for, whether it be in a reading, even with the paranormal. People want validation that there's life after death, because that's like the burning question, right? What happens when we die? So I think that that's a huge question for everybody. That's something that they want validation of. And then within a reading, depending on who it is they're looking to connect with, they want to know that they're okay, or that they can communicate with them from the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Sorry, it's just like, yeah.
Yeah. It's like one of those mind blown moments, right? Like, poof.
Yeah. And then what's your favorite place to like go to?
Ooh, like a haunted location?
Anything.
Okay. Let me think. I think one of my favorite places that I've ever been to, I would have to say Waverly Hills was one of my top places. I think because of the experiences that I've had there, as a medium, it's different. So, anybody who's been to Waverly Hills knows that there's tuberculosis and things like that. There was like a children's ward and all the families were separated. So there's a lot of heaviness there and stuff. And I've had such profound experiences there that I learned a lot, and I picked up on a lot. And so that was definitely one of my top places. I would love to go to Italy, being Italian, number one, and number two, just because there's like so much history there. My family talks about it. I have family in Naples. They talk about a lot of haunted history and stuff there. And so even though I haven't been there yet and I can't call it my favorite place, I would love to go there and investigate and just experience a lot of different locations in Italy.
Yeah. Like for me, I've never been to Waverly, sadly, but I really want to. Like, it is on my bucket list.
Yeah, you have to go.
So, if you don't mind me asking, what happened there?
The very first time that I went back in, it was either 2015 or 2016 was the first time that I went there. And, I had gone in there as a medium. I always go in without knowing anything about the location. I don't want to know anything in specific. So I went there and I didn't realize just that, I had mentioned before that there was a children's ward, the men and women were separated. And I went to school for teaching. So not only am I a mom, but I was also a teacher for 5 years in my local district. And so I've always had a draw to children and working with children, especially children with psychic abilities or mediumship abilities. So when I went into Waverly for the very first time, I just started walking around. But of course, I get drawn to the area where they would hold the children. And I didn't know at the time. And I remember communicating with this little girl, and it just hit me so hard. Like, it was so overwhelmingly sad what would have happened. And the stuff I was picking up on very clearly. So one of the, there was a guy there, he was one of the tour guides in the building, and I had finally grabbed a hold of him and I started asking him questions, and it validated what I had been picking up on with this girl. And it was almost immediately after that there was this red ball in the room, and the red ball just started bouncing like right near us. I got some really cool EVPs years ago there, up near the surgical room on one of either like the second or third floor. I forget which one it is, which is silly because I just went back there as if I should know. But me and Nick stayed in the basement literally almost the whole time when we went back, in like the morgue and everything. So we just went back in October. We stayed down there. But 2015 or 16, we went up to the surgical room, and it was weird. Like, I caught this EVP because I had been picking up on this doctor, and he was very frantic, and I just kept seeing him running back and forth as if there was, and I think that that's more residual energy, right? Like things that happen there that play out. And I saw him frantically running back and forth. And so we grabbed an EVP, and you could hear on the EVP him yelling, almost like he could see us or something. And he yelled at us to get out of there. Like it was almost like an emergency, like get out, And so we've got some really cool evidence there throughout the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you ever find out like what happened to residual? Or like what could have caused it?
The doctor one?
Yeah.
I mean, this tour guide, which I forget who it was, he was really cool. He kind of stuck with us because he loved that I was a medium. So we just got to talking. And so he stuck with us a little bit. And I remember asking him about it. And it's tough because there's just so much that happened there, that there's so many accounts of obviously doctors and things like that. I think that the most profound thing and the way that I connected it was, I felt a lot of pain in my chest while I was up there. Because as a medium, I can feel the way people died. And I kind of almost allow all of my senses to be open enough to where if I smell something, feel something, hear something, I know that it's not me, it's coming from something else. And so I opened myself up a little bit, and I started feeling like this heavy pain in my chest while I was up there. And they used to do these procedures because tuberculosis attacks the lungs, and they would break people's ribs open while they were awake. No anesthesia, no anything. And they would do these procedures or lobotomies or anything without any anesthesia. And so the heaviness that I was feeling, the pain in my chest, there's so many different accounts of that. I don't think it was necessarily one thing in specific, but he did validate for me the things that happened on that floor. So I think I was just picking up on a mixture of things, and possibly one of the doctors who was rushing people out in order to do one of these procedures.
Yeah.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Your face is like, why did you just tell me that?
No, like, why would they just, like, no anesthesia, just go on in there?
Yeah. I mean, it was the time too, right? Like, they didn't have the medication that we do now. They didn't have any of that stuff. And so in order to try to save the person's life, they had to do what they had to do.
Yeah, like, I know that they literally had people in the halls, like, lining each and every hall.
Yeah,
like,
it's a really weird vibe. Yeah, it's a really weird vibe when you walk in there. They have, like, the sun rooms where they believed that the sunlight would heal the patients. And so there's no windows, there's no anything. And, the beds would just be lined up there, and you could just picture in your mind these people laying there dying, literally, and thinking that the sunlight is going to cure them. But yeah, it's a very weird vibe in Waverly.
Yeah. And then, I think this is Waverly, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there, like, a tunnel system underneath, and there's, like, this little ramp that goes down that, like, transported bodies?
Yeah, the body chute. That's where me and Nick stayed. We did the Nick Groff tour in October, and we went to Waverly, and we literally stayed down in the morgue and where the body chute was, and pretty much for the whole time we investigated down there. And it's weird. I think what freaks me out more, though, and I'm not going to lie about this, are the spiders that are in there. So, like, he told me after the fact that when he was doing Paranormal Lockdown and stuff, there was, like, wolf spiders on the walls, and I am terrified of spiders. So I'm like, forget the ghosts, forget the spirits. We need flashlights, because if there's any spiders down here, I'm out. I'm gone.
Yeah.
You're in this by yourself. But yes, there is a body chute, and it's very weird. Very, very weird.
Yeah, like, for me, I'm terrified of all insects. Not just spider, like, every insect.
Yes. They belong outside, away from us.
That's the only reason that I like winter. They're not around.
Yes, no spiders, no anything. Yep, same.
Yeah.
And luckily it was cold in October.
Thank God.
It was cold, so there was no spiders. There was no wolf spiders. Yeah. I lucked out, so it was good. It was all good.
I would have booked a hotel so fast.
Yep. I warned them. I was like, if there's any of them, I'm leaving, and I'll be outside. And I'll see you later.
I will be renting a camper. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No. Just no.
No, I could handle spirits. I could handle ghosts. I could handle hauntings, creepy stuff. But spiders are a big no-no. And clowns. Spiders and clowns.
Clowns are okay for me. Like, especially, like, working on a haunted house, I get to see a bunch of them. So I'm like, hey.
Oh, you work at a haunted house?
Yeah.
Where do you work?
Factory of Fear.
Oh.
I know, right?
And that stuff doesn't freak you out.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you. I can handle, like, real haunted locations, but like the jump scare stuff, like those haunted houses that you go into on Halloween and stuff like that, I'm out. Like, I just, I'm not good with, like, the jump scare stuff at all.
Yeah, so, like, for me, I can do people in the haunted houses. I just can't do the animatronics.
Right. Yeah.
Because, like, I don't know why, but at my work, there used to be this, well, there is, but it used to be on the floor, and it's just non-animatronic. And it, before I even worked there, it popped out, grabbed my hair, and yanked me back. And ever since then, I could not do it.
I would have quit.
Like, no, like, I didn't even, like, say anything. Like, it just grabbed my hair, like, by a chunk and just pulled back. Luckily, it didn't, like, take me with it. But it took, like, a clump of hair, and I was sitting there, like, guys? And then
No.
later on, they literally cut a hole in the wall to push it back, and then now it's on a stage.
Yeah.
So,
No, I would have quit. I mean, good for you that you still stay there, because I would have quit really quickly. You want to hear a funny story? There is a haunted house in Madame Tussauds in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
And so I have family out there, and I would go there a lot. And my grandmother loved going to Vegas. So we went into Madame Tussauds one time, and it was a haunted house. And, you know, my family gets a kick out of scaring me and like watching me be scared. Like everybody for some reason thinks it's funny. So I agreed to go in this haunted house, not knowing that it was one of the ones where they could touch you and they get like right up in your face. So I thought it was just like a walkthrough, you know, it's like a wax museum. So I thought maybe it would just be like one of those stupid, creepy things. I was wrong. And I walked in, and this guy popped out of the wall, and I just lost it. I was screaming, and he must have like loved that I was the only one screaming and acting like a big baby, you know, in the group. So he followed me through the entire haunted house, and he would pop out of different spots and grab me and startle me, to the point where I just decided I'm done with this. So I started running through the haunted house, pushing people aside, like, get out of my way. I left, I think it was in the Venetian Hotel, if I remember correctly. Okay. I found the door to the exit, and I left, and I just kept running through the casino and through the hotel until I got out onto the strip, and I just kept running. And my parents, like my mom, my grandmother, everybody who was with me at the time found me at like another hotel somewhere down the street. I was gone. So that's how much I hate jump scare stuff. It's a true story.
True story, guys. True story.
Yes. It's a true story.
No, so for ours, we don't touch people. Like, ours is a no touch. So.
Yeah. See, that's better. Yeah, that's better. I can't handle the touch and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So, like, for me, I work in medical, and we are one of the most aggressive. Like, we get in people's faces.
Oh. Yeah.
And for me, I had this giant cone. So, like, when I get in your face, you cannot see anything to your sides.
No.
And it's so funny. Because, like, people, they'll walk in, they start screaming, and they take a good look at me, and then they're like, is that a cone? I'm just like, it's always a cone, not even the personality, just the cone.
Well, now I know never to come and visit you at work.
Oh.
At work. Other than that, I'll visit you, but not at work.
What the heck?
I can't.
You won't come and visit Lucille?
No, I mean, I'll see you anywhere else. Anywhere but the haunted house.
I'll even walk through with you.
Hold my hand, and I'm, like, shivering.
No, you'll just be, like, holding my hand. And then, like, you look over, you're like,
no. I'm just crying.
You're, like, just still, like, in full costume. And you just look over, like, oh, God.
Yeah, people have fun with it with me because I'm so scared of it, so... Good to know, Maddie. Good to know.
My sister is the same way.
Yeah.
Like, we went to the Skeleton Manor one when, like, I didn't work at Factory of Fear. She ran through the whole thing. And she was with her boyfriend. And I was with her boyfriend's mom. And then me and her afterwards went to, like, 3 more before I went home. Oh, and it was so fun.
Yeah, I bet. That's awesome.
There's this other one. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like they take you on this tractor ride, they go down, and then there's like this arch, and I was the second person in line. This girl starts walking with her best friend. This guy pops out with a chainsaw. The girl pees herself, and she has to leave.
Yeah, I totally sympathize with her. That would probably be me.
And I was just walking with my friend and my dad, and we're just waltzing on through like, we did not just witness that.
Yeah. So you are okay with that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And normal, like, real haunted locations, you like Waverly. What's another place that's on your bucket list that you would actually want to investigate?
Oh my God, there's so many. So, like, I want to go to the Gettysburg Battlefield so bad.
Okay. Yeah.
Like,
so I went on a field trip there when I was like I think I was in middle school. That was one of our field trips in Gettysburg.
You are so lucky.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
The least we did for middle school was like go to a park or something, I think.
Yeah, we got a lot of really cool field trips. There's a place in our area too, Fort Niagara. And
I've been there.
Oh, you've been there? Okay, so I went there, I think it was like anywhere between 3rd and 5th grade, I think. We went on a trip where you would stay overnight there. Now, this was all supposed to be, 3rd, 4th grade, historical, and it's supposed to be fun, like a camping trip. And for me, I would like wander off by myself, and I was talking to spirit and getting in trouble for leaving my group and stuff like that. And, but between like Fort Niagara and doing Gettysburg and stuff like that, those battlefields and everything have such an intense energy. You would probably love it if you ever went to Gettysburg.
Yeah. Yeah, like for me, I like history more than anything. Like history, favorite subject in school. And then I just find history so cool in general.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Because, it's good, especially as like an investigator.
Yeah.
You really want to know the history. You want to know a lot about it. And I think that also helps to uncover things too, like you knowing things and then uncovering maybe something new or something, that isn't recorded or something like that. So it's really good. It's good that you like that kind of stuff. It'll come in really handy on investigations.
Yeah. And then you know how like asylums and hospitals, they have like those books, like where they'll write down the name and their symptoms and stuff. Like I want to go to like an abandoned hospital and find one of those and just go through it.
So
I would find that so cool.
Yeah. I was on, this is a really cool thing. Nick's new show, Death Walker. We filmed over the summer at the hospital, actually, where I had my near-death experience. And so he asked me to be in the episode, and I was the medium. And it was the first time I'd been back because the hospital was abandoned. It's been abandoned for years. And it was funny because he like texted to me one day and was like, "Do you know this place?" So I'm looking at it and I'm like, God, that looks really familiar. And I'm looking up the location and everything like that. And it ended up being the hospital that I was at when I had my near-death experience. I didn't even know it was abandoned. I had no idea. And so I was like, yeah, of course I'll come. So we went there and we investigated. And I was picking up on this girl on the first floor. Her name was Sarah. And I was connecting with this girl. She was 12 years old. She passed away from an accident. And so Nick went outside to do some B-roll and stuff outside, and he left me with Geoport. So my mom and I had Geo, and we just decided, because we had been picking up on so much, with our ability, we decided to maybe try to validate that through a spirit box. So we turned Geo on, and all of a sudden Sarah started coming through. Later on that night, when Nick went back with his cousin to film, he had turned it on as well. And I told him a little bit about what I was feeling. But we had filmed so much that I think it just left his mind. And when he started filming again, all of a sudden Sarah came through for them and was communicating with them and telling him the same stuff that I was saying earlier in the day. And then from there, we went back up to where my room was. So I got to go back there after 30 years and I got to see the surgical room. And in that episode, it was so active and the evidence that they caught was unbelievable. So going along with what you were saying about abandoned hospitals, it's really a weird vibe because if you think about it, there's life, there's death, people are born in a hospital, people die in a hospital. There's a lot of events that take place there, a lot of energy and stuff like that. So they're very interesting when it comes to investigating. Yeah.
Like hospitals and asylums, they're just so cool for no reason. For no like for no reason. Like I'll just walk up to one, I'll be like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just like, Mom, Dad, I'm going to the asylum today.
Going to the asylum. That's me walking into work.
Yeah.
Because that's what my surroundings are. Literally a psych ward for girls.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Or the wayward home for girls.
Yeah.
That's what my boss calls it. But
Yep.
so like every time I go to work, I'm like, off to the asylum.
That's so cool.
And I think that's maybe a reason why I connect with those locations a little bit, like, more now.
Yep.
Because, like, I don't know. I feel like everyone can at least connect with one hospital or asylum.
Yeah.
Like, just one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that they have, like I said, so much history. And I think somebody very, if you're interested in the paranormal, if you have any ability, the way that I do, those are some of those top places that, you definitely pick up on a lot, especially with abilities. And I've never not had a crazy experience in an asylum or a hospital. So
Exactly.
Yep.
Like, there's so much energy there. Like you said, life, death, everything has happened there.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Like,
very cool.
I don't know, man. Like, hospitals and asylums are just something else, and I love it.
Yeah. So is there another one that you'd want to go to, like a top one on your list that you'd want to go to?
I can't remember the name of it. That's the thing. But it's in Fort Madison, I think. Fort Madison, or like near Burlington area.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's there.
Yeah.
But it's like a jail, I think. Prison jail.
Yeah.
Some of that nature.
There's an asylum here in Buffalo, and it's weird because it's been there forever. It's It's the Buffalo Psychiatric Center, and it's the biggest. It looks like a castle. I don't know how else to explain it. It's a very old building. When you look at it from the outside, it's very overwhelming because of just the way it's built. It's actually a beautiful building. I don't know how it looks like something out of Harry Potter. Like, that's the only thing I could think of. It reminds me of like a building out of Harry Potter. And like not long ago, a few years back, they renovated part of the building and made it into a hotel. But they left like a huge part of the psychiatric ward, and it's abandoned. And so once I heard that they had opened up part of it as a hotel, they had this grand opening. They had these events there. So I like gathered some of my friends. I was like, we're going, but we're not going for the grand opening. Like, we're going to sneak into the other part. We're going to figure this out. So
that'd be me.
So we go there, and, we played the part. I was all dressed up. Like, we were trying to pretend that we were there for this grand opening and everything. And we found an elevator, and we went into the elevator, and we went up to one of the areas that would have connected to, the other half of it. And I have to say, like, the energy that hit me from what happened there actually made me nauseous. Like, I ran to the bathroom. I felt like I was going to puke. Then we got stuck up in that area because you're not supposed to be up there. Like, there were signs that said, do not enter, which is like a direct indication that you're supposed to enter when they put those signs up. So I went there anyways. And then we couldn't get back down. So we were knocking on the stairwell, trying to wait for one of the security guards to come up and let us out. So it was interesting. But my point is that we've been trying to get into that location for so long, and they won't allow paranormal investigations. But the workers who worked on the building to renovate the hotel part said that there was a ton of activity that happened that the workers experienced while they were renovating it. So that's like on my bucket list to see if we could somehow get into there.
I swear, like, they could make so much more money if they just did that.
Yeah.
And open up to like a whole new audience.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know people would pay to like go see it.
Well, yeah, I think it's more common now. People, like we said earlier, people are much more open to this kind of stuff, and it really helps to attract people and renovate things and brings in money and things like that. So I personally think that they should let us in to investigate.
And then was it like an open space, or were there still like rooms in there?
No, there were still rooms. It's weird because if you think about, there's like broken windows. Part of it almost reminded me of Waverly, where like there was no windows And you could see, like, from one part of the building, because it's so big, like, I'm not kidding when I say it looks like something out of Harry Potter. But if you stand in one of the areas, there's different, like, wings and stuff like that. And you can look out and see the other parts of the building. And there's no windows. It almost looks like what could be a tuberculosis area or something. But there are still rooms. And then you can also see equipment and beds and things like that from the time period, because like I said, they only renovated one part of it. And then the other side of it is still very much just left how it was. So it'd be really interesting to get in there. But I got in trouble, so we weren't allowed to go any further.
Yeah, like, even if they didn't do, like, actual paranormal investigations, they could have just done tours. And I know people would go to see that.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Like, just hearing about it seems really cool. And I'm pretty sure that, like, I've actually, like, I haven't been there, but I've seen pictures.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to send you pictures after this. I'll send you some of the pictures I took while I was in there. Gotcha. They're really cool.
Yeah, because does it have, like, steel beams just, like, going throughout the building? And, like, some parts for no reason? No?
From what I could tell, there is areas like that. And then there's areas that were, I don't know how to explain it. They're very old. So some of it was still like the carpet and everything, I remember, was just really strange, and these weird designs and things that you would wonder why they did it that way. You know what I mean? Like, so some of it was weird, and it's not the typical asylum that you think of. And I don't know the full history of it. I don't know what each part was used as or anything like that. But I'll have to send you pictures so you can understand what I'm talking about.
Gotcha. Like, just hearing about it, I can kind of, like, make a picture in my mind. But that would be, like, really nice.
Yeah, I'll send them to you.
So, like, so it was, like, really overwhelming there. But, like, was there anything else that you picked up on? Like, people or anything?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that I picked up on there that was not pleasant, you know? I picked up a lot on women and possible things that were done that weren't so great to them while they were staying there. And I think just the overwhelming feeling of, you know, because as a medium and as an empath, you pick up on people's emotions and you pick up on what they felt. And I think just feeling what some of these patients felt during that time was what really got to me. And, you know, when I do open myself up like that, it can flood you, you know, and it did. It made me very sick. And I don't get like that in locations very often. It's very rare. And so that was definitely one of the locations that made me very sick and very anxious. And yeah.
And then, do you think that they were all in the unrenovated area, or do you think that some of them were still in the renovated part of it?
I think that, and I'm not 100% sure in the renovated part what they used it for. You could definitely feel people walking around there, a lot of residual things, but it was the other area that, to me at least, was the heaviest. But yeah, in the renovated part, you know, it's beautiful. Like, the crazy thing is you would never know that it was an asylum or that it was a psych ward. It was so beautiful what they did to it. And yet, as a medium, I could still see the past and I could still see the things that took place there. So it's very interesting coming from my point of view to see something so beautiful, but yet in your mind, you know what took place there years ago. So there's definitely a lot of residual in that area.
Yeah. Like, for me, if I had to say anything, like, you said that there was still equipment from that time era, correct?
Yep.
If I were them, I would, like, not take that as a selling point, but just display it as in, this did happen, and this is what this was before we renovated it, kind of thing, to, like, represent the history.
Yeah, that's why I think it's really cool when some of these historical buildings, one of them being like the Hinsdale House, which is here in New York, you know, keeping the pieces of history and allowing people to experience that and see these pieces from history and stuff like that is very important. There's a lot of places I've been to where they keep, hospital beds and wheelchairs and, furniture even from the time period and personal items and stuff like that. And not only does that link, energy and that residual energy and sometimes even intelligent spirit or ghosts. But it's interesting for somebody even like you who really likes the history or is interested in that kind of stuff. So I think it's very important.
Yeah. Like a place like Malvern Manor, they do have a lot of the stuff that's still there. And I think that's really cool to have that there just to represent everyone that was there and kind of respect them in a way.
Yep.
Instead of just throwing it all out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Very cool.
Yeah, like they still have all the old clothing. And I know that someone literally has fingernails in there. They kept them there.
Oh my God. That's wild.
I know. What can I say? History is history.
It's true. It's very true. I would love to go to Malvern Manor, and that's one of the places that is on my list of places that I have to go.
Yeah, you can go see the fingernails.
I know. Well, now
Yay!
I have to. It reminds me of I hear that and I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something.
Oh my God, yes.
Right?
That image just popped up in my mind. Sorry, I was like... No, but there's this dresser full of old clothing from the past resident, and then there's just fingernail clippings in it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Which in a way it's kind of gross, but at the same it's oh yeah, cool.
Yeah,
history, I guess.
That's crazy. Wow, very interesting. I can't wait to go there.
Yeah, there's this Shadowman hallway there that you should check out. And then one of the last rooms, so if you walk in, turn to the right, there's a hallway, a shorter end, that has a door that's not blocked out. If you're facing the door, turn right. Sorry, I had to think about that.
Yeah.
And there's this room that I really enjoy. And it's this lady. I don't even, if I get this wrong, I am so sorry. Don't quote me on this. But, as I remember, there was this guy who just, mentally abused the wife. And she was always oh, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not pretty enough. So, she would pull out clumps of hair in the mirror into the sink. And, that room, there was a lot of feelings in that room.
Yeah.
A lot of it was sadness and just, all those sadder feelings, thoughts, yeah. I don't really know how to explain it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was interesting in that room. And it wasn't just me in there.
Right.
And everyone just felt this pressure and not a bad pressure, but this sadness in the room.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's cool too, having different people going to the location and seeing everybody's experiences. Because I always say, even as a medium, I'm not the only medium, right? So there's people who have the same ability as me, or sometimes it differs a little bit. But, we experience things differently. We pick up on things differently. And it's the same with investigating. One person's experience might not be what somebody else experiences, but each person can maybe bring one of those puzzle pieces back to what played out during history and stuff like that. And so it's really cool.
Yeah. And then I know they have this area in the attic. I don't even know how to explain it. It's a crawl space in a way.
Yeah.
But they found old beer cans up there. And so they have people have brought in beer cans just to add to the collection, and they're still finding stuff in just in the building.
Wow.
So,
oh wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. Very crazy.
Yeah. So before we start wrapping things up, would you like to share where people can find you, your podcast, everything like that?
Sure. So my website, TessaDelZoppo.com. A lot of people want to know how to book private readings with me because I still do private readings. And the only way to book a private reading with me is through my website. So TessaDelZoppo.com. There's a lot of fake accounts out there, so it's probably good to say it verbally for people. Don't fall for the fake accounts. The only way to book a reading with me is on my website. Also on my website, I normally will post my events. So there's a really cool event coming up in August, I believe, for G Crew. I'll be doing a gallery reading back at Bobby Mackey's, which should be fun. So I'll be posting all my events, my Live with the Other Side venue show. Whenever those come out, I will be putting them up on there as well. Me and Nick have Dead Time with the Groffs, like we were talking about, and that is a web series, so it's on YouTube. And if you just look up Dead Time with the Groffs on YouTube, you can come across all of our episodes and follow us on there. We do have, all of our social media. I'm on, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the fun stuff. And then Dead Time with the Groffs is also on each one of those as well. So definitely follow us on there.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, there it is, folks. All right. Well, I'm starting to see the Shadow Man running the corner, telling me that our time is almost over. So I'd really like to thank you for coming on and chatting with me, my listeners here on Spoopy Talk.
Very cool. Thank you for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, great conversation. Let me just say.
Yes.
All right. So now, for all my listeners out there, I'd really like to say thank you for being with me tonight. My next show will be March 6th with Natalie Jones with Paraflix. Make sure if you're not following me, give me a follow at Madison Paranormal Investigation on Facebook and Maddie_Paranormal_Investigation on Instagram. So for tonight, peace, love, and happiness, and most of all, be spooky, everyone.